Good morning or good day, everyone. My name is Cheryl Stevens. I have spent the last 12 and a half years at Syncrude Canada. I am a chartered professional accountant by trade, but have spent the last 4 years working in our mining operations. And I'm here to talk to everyone about our driver safety system fatigue monitoring and our journey in implementing that technology. Next slide, please. So just for a little information, we are located in about 35 kilometers north of Fort McMurray. So for those who aren't aware where Fort McMurray is, it's the northern part of Alberta, where we've had the pleasure of being at minus 62 with wind chill for the last couple of weeks. It's warming up to a balmy minus 20. Our operations are open pit mining with a truck shovel operation where we extract the oil sand, send it through a primary extraction where we manufacture bitumen, which we ship off to our upgrader for further processing. Our byproducts do include water, sand, clays, and coke, and we do a lot of work around reclamation and containment and water storage. Next slide, please. So our Mildred Lake mining operation, it's one of 2 leases that we're currently working. My particular lease has 82 ultra class haul trucks. They can move anywhere from 240 to 400 tons of material, that being the Cat 797s. We work a 3-day, 3-night, 6-day off, 12-hour shifts. And if you look at on average, each haul truck is driven about 125 kilometers a day. That might not seem like a lot, but if you think about it from the perspective of a 2-story house on wheels that weighs 700 tons or 1.3 million pounds loaded, it is a pretty phenomenal feat. Now, for reference, you know, if this particular truck were to run over a pickup truck, it would be like you taking your personal vehicle and driving over a pop can. You would not feel anything at all. So our journey at Syncrude started in 2019, and if you can move to the next slide, I will show you why we decided to draw a line in the sand and start looking at fatigue. These 5 pictures reference some incidents that we had in about a 5-month time frame. The one in the top left corner was at our Aurora site. We were lucky, no one was injured, but this unit was out of service for 61 days and $1 million in repairs. If you look at the unit in the top right corner, this one was at our Mildred Lake site. This one as well. No injury. This particular individual admitted to have been tired and asleep, and he did not actually realize what had happened until he hit the second berm. Miraculously, this truck was out of service for 1 day and $100,000 in damage. But if you look at the middle picture and the bottom right-hand corner, this particular incident was the incident that had us decide to take immediate action versus taking a little bit more time to figure out what we wanted to do. In this particular incident, the young lady who was driving or operating that particular piece of equipment was distracted. We weren't able to determine whether it was a distraction or fatigue, but she hit the berm going 29 kilometers an hour, loaded. In this particular case, that truck was out of service for 448 days. The damage was $2.6 million, but for the grace of God, this individual walked away with just a bruised knee. Had it not been for the ROP system in the vehicle and her seatbelt, she would have most likely passed away from this particular incident. So this is something that's very, very passionate with me because I've had a family member killed in a mining incident. So when that particular situation happened with that truck, immediate action was taken, and within 3 months we implemented our driver safety system. Next slide, please. So this particular system we chose, one, because the unit is installed on the truck. It's a small camera about the size of a GoPro, and it takes pictures of individuals' faces and 24 different facial features to look for indications of fatigue. So for example, when you get tired, your cheeks start to relax, your eyebrows start to relax, and it will take a picture, a series of pictures, 6 shots to be exact, of that particular fatigue event. But the parameters that we've set, and you can set your own parameters, is that this equipment needs to be moving greater than 10 kilometers and the eyes need to be closed for greater than 1.5 seconds. When a situation like this happens, you will get an audible alarm, but the seat will also vibrate. And the great thing about this is because it runs off of cellular data, if you have a dead spot, you might not get the event being reported to the call center, but the operator will always get the vibrating seat and get the audible alarm. We've also got the distraction event turned on in this as well. And so for this, if the operator looks away from the road for greater than 5.5 seconds and greater than 10 kilometers, they get an audible alarm saying distraction event, and it just reminds them to put their face forward and look at what they're doing. And as you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide, it gives you an idea of what we would see when we get a notification that there's a fatigue event. We get a picture of the operator's face with their eyes closed, but we've opted for the two-way system so we can see what's coming at them. This system also comes with suppression zones. So if you have areas where you know somebody's going to be doing constant shoulder checks, you can turn that alarm off so you don't automatically and are not always listening to an audible alarm when you absolutely expect your folks to be checking their shoulders. We also get field of view. So this allows us to determine if something is wrong with the camera and they can't see the operator face. This one is very, very important because as part of our change management philosophy, we spent a lot of time getting our folks to feel comfortable with the system and embracing the technology and trusting in us that, you know, we weren't there to spy on them. We weren't there to look and see what they were doing, to see if they were doing anything wrong, just that we wanted the camera to work. Now you do get a picture if somebody has decided to cover the camera, and you will actually see them placing a cap on the camera or smudging the mirror. But we treat that as tampering with a safety device because that's exactly what this is. Now, a fatigue event is something completely different. We've committed to our operators that these fatigue events are non-punitive. People are meant to be asleep at night. People are meant to sleep when they're tired. The shifts that we have people work are not conducive to good sleep. And so this system we've committed to our folks is non-punitive. However, the system does look for facial features, and if somebody is doing something that they shouldn't, i.e. Lighting a cigarette, we do not allow folks to smoke in our equipment, and it picks it up assuming it's a fatigue event. We've been very clear with our folks that if the system picks up a breach of one of our policies, we will address the breach. The system we chose also has a black box feature, which is absolutely fantastic. Part of having the benefits of having the two-way camera. So with the black box system, if there were a significant safety event, we could access and make a request to get the live video of the event. Now, because we wanted to make sure we protect our folks' privacy, we've been very, very specific about the rigor around how and when we can ask for the black box data. And that includes it being a very significant event and or a breach of the life-saving rules. Having had one scenario where we've had to acquire the black box data, I can tell you that I had to be very specific as to what I was looking for, very specific within the time frame, and the information was only released to me on a secured site with a specific password. So, I spent a lot of time making sure that our folks were comfortable with the system and protecting their privacy, because that's really what it's intended to do, is to protect them. Next page, please. So as part of the fatigue monitoring implementation, we did it in 3 phases. Again, to give our folks time to adjust to the fact that there was going to be a camera in their face. So first phase, we did install, so that took about 3 months. During the installation phase, we had some folks from Caterpillar who were subject matter experts in fatigue come and talk to our individuals about fatigue, about the system, the intent of the system. We cleared the way where they could have free access to the subject matter experts to ask whatever questions they wanted without fear of reprisal. So we removed all the synchronized leadership from the room so they could ask those questions. And we brought in many departments within our organization to discuss the system, including HR, legal, maintenance, public affairs. Again, we wanted to make sure we did this once, we did this right, and that this was really about looking after our people. Our second phase, we turned on the alarms and the vibrations in the seat, so people could get used to driving and having the alarm go off and the seat vibrate. And what we'll notice, or what we noticed, is that people got used to it, and our fatigue events decreased significantly over the 8 months where we were going through phase 2. Now, part of the reason phase 2 went so long was because, as we all know, the world came to a bit of a grinding halt last March with regards to COVID, and we spent a lot of time considering the implications of going live after COVID had caused havoc in the global world. We did decide to go live on June 23rd, and we came with a fatigue intervention plan, which I'll discuss in just a minute. But we spent a long time building trust with our operators, specifically in phase 3. The first 2 weeks that we were live, we had a lot of folks who were saying, that's not me, I didn't have a fatigue event. I was grabbing a sip of water, I was grabbing a piece of candy, and we invited them to see pictures of their fatigue events that were stored on a secure site where and once they had seen those events, they were like, oh my goodness, I didn't even realize. If we can move on to the next page, please. Because I'm an accountant, I like statistics, and so I wanted to track our progress. And so the red bar shows the average number of events per unit installed. Blue bars are the number of distractions, and the gray bars are the number of units installed in total. And so February was a pretty interesting month. We'd had the alarms turned on for a little while, and in a 3-day span, we had one individual have over 700 fatigue events. It was enough that while we weren't live, the Caterpillar Monitoring Center gave us a call so we could intervene. And as I sat down and chatted with this individual and leadership, it turned out this person did have a medical condition at the end of all the work and the inquiry and the questions. And we were able to help this person move past this condition so they could be a productive operator. And this was one of the things we did to develop trust, was by ensuring that this was non-punitive and that we honored our word. But if you think about it, this particular individual was having a fatigue event on average approximately every 5 minutes. So essentially was operating a 700-ton, 2-story moving vehicle asleep. We can move on to the next slide, please. So one thing we did, in addition to not just having the alarms turned on and the monitoring center letting us know when there are events, we generated a fatigue intervention plan. And to me, this is the most important part of what we've done. This fatigue intervention plan gave our frontline leadership a check sheet where they could assess how their direct reports were feeling and functioning, but also gave us some comfort and confidence, and that we weren't putting somebody behind the wheel who was tired. So what we've done is the first fatigue event in a 12-hour shift, our blend coordinator will contact the operator and find out if they're okay to operate and let them know they've had an event. It's the operator's prerogative to say, I am okay to operate, or no, I think I need to be switched out, or I need a break. If there's a second event, same day, same shift, the blend coordinator will contact the operator and ask them to pull over where it's safe to do so and wait for leadership. Leadership then has an opportunity to take this check sheet, have that face-to-face conversation with the operator and determine if they're okay to continue to operate. It allows them to look for slurred speech, watery eyes, and bring that operator a coffee and let them know it's okay to say, I'm tired and I need to be switched out. If there's a third event on the same day in the same shift, the blend coordinator will contact the operator, ask them to pull over where it's safe to do so, and will remove them from safety sensitive duties. Again, non-punitive, but we just don't want them to operate anymore for the rest of that shift. Now, should somebody have 3 occurrences where 3 times in a 12-month period, we've had to remove them from their equipment because of fatigue, we'll do an automatic mandatory referral to our health and wellness group to determine if there is anything that needs to be addressed from a health perspective. So far, since June of last year, we've only had 1 person out of a team of about 800 people where we have had to do a mandatory referral to our health and wellness group. And again, in this particular case, this person has been diagnosed with a condition, and we're using the resources we have to help this individual work through the condition and come back as a productive employee. The most impressive piece of this entire journey is what I'm going to share with you on the next page. If you can advance the slide, please. So these are 2 graphs, and it shows the fatigue events by date. You can see in the very top graph, as we went live, the fatigue events are all over the map. You might have a day where there's 1, and then you might have a day where there was 160. And that was June. So June, we had 1,280 fatigue events. When you look at the bottom chart, you can see the fatigue events in red are they flatlined out. By July, we were down to 231. September, we were down to 200. And this past January, we were down to 120 fatigue events. We recognize we will never get to 0. We are humans after all, and we do get tired, and operating a haul truck, while might seem mundane, it is very high risk. We'll never get to 0, but we want to make sure that we avoid any one of those pictures that I showed you at the beginning. And I'm very proud of our folks and the journey we've been on, because we have not had a single berm contact since June of 2020, actually 2019. So it's been a very successful journey. It was a worthwhile journey, and it was worth all the effort we put into the change management, because it made it very, very easy to transition to go live from stage 2. And like I mentioned before, within 2 weeks, we didn't have anybody making up excuses as to why they were having a fatigue event. And we've changed the dynamics in our mining operation, where people will actually say after a fatigue event, you know what, I think I need my break early. Does anybody have any questions on this that they'd like to ask?
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that presentation. That was it's very interesting about what you've done and some of the, not only what technology you used, but also the process that you used to implement it, and the change management piece, which I think, as you highlighted, is very important to consider. There's one question thus far from Ryan Facette, and Mark Holmes also said great case study. So Ryan says, awareness in order to encourage employees to speak up when tired What types of programs or incentives do you have to ensure that they are transparent and not worried of repercussions?
So you know what? We've always encouraged our operators to come forward and speak freely, but the change management in us implementing the driver safety system was really the key piece. We gave them tons of opportunity to ask questions of the subject matter experts from CAT. In fact, we brought them back 3 times and gave them handheld radios where they could go out and get onto our chat channel and talk with our folks. It was a year of me promising them that I had their best interest. It was me demonstrating to them that I've gone to our 3 different lawyers within our organization to make sure I was protecting their privacy. And it was me honoring my word, even when you see 700 fatigue events in a 3-day span and wanting to go holy moly and go crazy. It was about me pulling myself back down from the ceiling and having a conversation with an individual and building trust.
Where the questions that are coming in hot and heavy now. One of them I think is, there's 2 of them that are fairly similar, and it's really about what have you noticed in terms of the timing of fatigue events, in terms of the time of day, or is also like throughout the course of a 6-day work period? Are there days and times that
there absolutely is. It was very, very interesting. Again, with me being an accountant, I like to look for patterns and trends. And so the first thing I noticed, surprisingly enough, the first day back on shift is probably the worst, followed by the first night shift, and then it's fairly static. The numbers drop down significantly on second and third day shift. Now, with regards to time of day, we typically see it between 4 and 6 a.m. is when they start to increase, and usually it's about a half an hour to an hour before shift change.
There's a couple other questions that I'll try to tie them together as well. Yep. One is related to how you include family members in the fatigue awareness part. And the second part is related to the non-punitive question. That's about how do you budget for relief operators in case there is fatigue. So I guess break that into 2, but
sure.
How do you work with the families, and then also how do you handle and budget for when fatigue is a problem?
So in our operation, we always budget for 12 to 18 what we call switch outs on any given shift to cover breaks. In Alberta, it's legislated that you are entitled to 3 20-minute or 2 30 minutes. And from a productivity perspective, we like to keep our trucks rolling as much as we can. So we've built it into our plan to have 12 to 18. And the reality is we've made it very clear to our shift organization that should we not have switch outs and someone is not fit to work because they are tired, we will park that truck. First and foremost, safety first. Now, with regards to the families involved in the fatigue, it really depends on what happens with the individual. So if somebody's having a life event, and that could be anything from a new baby, noisy neighbors, any sort of personal issues, our health and wellness department will help with that, and that could include a mandatory referral to our employee family assistance programs. We also have lots of pamphlets and information that we hand out freely about sleeping for shift, eating for shift, all the different things that we need people who work in a shift organization to be aware of to be healthy.
So we've got 2 more questions I know from people that work in mining environments. Yep. I'd like to get to before the break. One is from Brad Atkins, and it's a question about how do drugs and alcohol contribute to fatigue, and what sort of management systems might you have in place to avoid that? And I'll get to the second one after this.
Just a clarification there, Marcus. It's more so in relation to, have you noticed a reduction in events where the contributing factors were drugs or alcohol, now that you have a fatigue management practice in place? So, cut into the chase, are people less likely to utilize drugs and alcohol before work, knowing that you have this fatigue management application?
I'd like to say yes. I don't have any definitive proof one way or the other. I mean, to add with the fatigue monitoring system and a drugs and alcohol perspective, we have just naturally increased the use of the sniffer dogs because of the legalization of cannabis. But what I can say is unequivocally, we have had less berm contacts, and knowing that should you decide to nod off, the system is there to intervene. But should anybody who is undergoing any sort of assessments with our health and wellness folks, we would never be notified as to whether or not it was drug or alcohol, just that the person is off for assessment.
And from Mike Jankowski, the question is, what is your shift length and rotation? Have you seen a pattern with fatigue events in any particular shift length and or rotation, days on versus off?
So we posed that question to our folks from Caterpillar, and they said it doesn't really matter what shift rotation you work. The events typically will happen when we're seeing them. And for us, a rotation is 6 on, 6 off. We have had various different shift rotations in the past, and the one that seems to not impact the circadian rhythm as much is the 3 days, 3 nights. Again, it always seems to be starting at, say, 4 in the evening or 4 in the morning, and really peaking about an hour before shift change.
I said there was going to be 2 questions, and there's one more that I think is worth asking, and then we'll go to break for 10 minutes.
Sure.
It's from Luc St. Arnaud, and this is about the fatigue monitoring system and verification or maintenance, and also can a truck work if the system functionality is not working properly?
So what we've decided here at Mildred Lake is that we need to have 85% functionality of the driver safety system before we'll put a truck down. And so because this system is increasing in popularity in our region, it usually doesn't take us very long to get replacement parts. We can usually have it turned around in very short order. And since we've installed, we've been constantly at about 90 to 95% functioning units, so we haven't had to park any trucks. But again, no different than if we didn't have enough switch outs. If we got below a point of 85% availability with the units functioning, we would park the truck until it could be fixed.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your presentation and for answering all the questions.